46. I don't know if I need to do a recap of last week, but probably take too long. But we ended in chapter 45, and like Michael pointed out, originally I was going to leave that out and start it this week. It was like, as I was going through it, I'm going, well, that wasn't very smart. I can't leave it there. I have to do chapter 45. And it kind of was a big climax when Joseph revealed himself to his brothers and sent for his father to come home. And so now we're gonna see how that pans out here in chapter 46. It says, so Israel took his journey. Israel, we remember, is the same as Jacob. The names are interchangeable. His name was Jacob, which kind of had a negative connotation to it, but God changed his name to Israel, and the country was named after him through his 12 sons, the 12 tribes of Israel. So he took his journey with all that he had and came to Beersheba and offered sacrifices to the God of his father Isaac. That's funny that it says the God of his father Isaac, doesn't say his God. So we see that sometimes God's kind of telling us of what kind of a place he's in. His name was, God-given name was Israel. But whenever it uses his natural-born name, sometimes it reflects that he's going back to his sinful nature, kind of. Then God spoke to Israel in the visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, here I am. So he said, I am God, the God of your father. Do not fear to go down to Egypt, for I will make of you a great nation there. I love to look at some of the commentaries when I'm studying, especially through Blue Letter Bible. They have David Guzik, who I really like. And so I looked at some of his things here, and I want to share some of them with you. It's been more than 40 years, or 40 years before, when Jacob was about to leave the promised land, God spoke to him in a dream. That was in Genesis 28. Now, when he was about to leave the land again, Canaan, God again brought assurance through a dream of visions of the night. He said, do not fear to go down to Egypt. This strongly suggests that Israel was afraid to go to Egypt. Jacob may have remembered that Abraham had gone to Egypt in a time of famine once before, and it was an expression of his unbelief. And much evil eventually came from it. That was in Genesis 12. Anyway, he also may have remembered that God told his father Isaac not to go down to Egypt when he was about to flee down there. Also, Jacob knew God told Abraham that his descendants would be strangers in a land that is not theirs. This was when Abraham was still Abram. God told him that his descendants would be strangers in a land that is not theirs and will serve them, and they will afflict them 400 years. So if he's remembering that, he's probably thinking, I don't know if I want to go down to Egypt, you know. But, so we continue on in verse 4. God says, I will go down with you to Egypt. Whoa. You know, set any worries and fears aside when you hear that. And I will also surely bring you up again, and Joseph will put his hand on your eyes. So God's saying, I'm going to bring you back to Canaan when you pass away, you know. And Joseph's going to be there with you when you pass away. It's like that's pretty comforting, too, for him, that he's not going to be buried in Egypt, God told him. Then Jacob arose from Beersheba, and the sons of Israel carried their father Jacob, their little ones and their wives, in the carts which Pharaoh had sent to carry him. Remember those cool like limousines were sent for him, and like nothing they had seen in Canaan. And so they took their livestock and their goods which they had acquired in the land of Canaan and went to Egypt. Jacob and all his descendants with him, his sons and his sons' sons, his daughters. We heard about one daughter he had, Dinah, but we didn't hear about the other daughters. Now we know that Jacob had more girls. And his sons' daughters and all his descendants he brought with him to Egypt. As Jacob, this is from David Guzik's commentaries too, as Jacob led his family into this foreign land, he did not know what the future held. At the same time, he knew the future was in God's hands. As Israel connected with what God did in the past by sacrificing at Beersheba, he was assured of God's plan for the future. Charles Spurgeon says, "Hesitate, my dear friend, while you are not sure that it is God's will. But when once you are certain that it is according to the Lord's mind, it will be unfaithfulness to God to have any kind of fear. Steam straight ahead, for that way lies your haven." I like how he words that. In Genesis 45:27, we saw how important these carts were to Jacob. His spirit revived when he saw this impressive wealth and technology from Egypt. And all his descendants he brought with him shows the great faith Israel had. He brought the entire family down to Egypt. No one was left behind to continue a presence in Canaan. Jacob was both all in, and he knew they would be back someday. And the sons of Judah are a special note because this is the messianic lineage. The line of descent to this point went like this: Abraham to Isaac, Isaac to Jacob, Jacob to Judah, and Judah to Perez, and Perez to Hezron. We'll hear those names a little bit later. His family would become a nation of perhaps more than 2 million over the next 400 years. We're going to see that it kind of sums it up saying, well, there's like 70. I don't think it includes the women and children, but it was about 70. Stephen says later 75, but that was because he was counting Joseph's children, I think, something like that. But it's not a discrepancy. But from 75 to over a couple of million in the 400 years. Like many great works of God, Israel had a slow beginning. From the time God called Abraham, it took at least 25 years to add one son, Isaac. It took 60 years to add another son of Israel, Jacob. It took 50 or 60 years for Jacob to add 12 sons and one daughter. Actually, more daughters, we find out. But in 430 years, Israel would leave Egypt with 600,000 men. And then when you add women and children, it's about 2 million. It took his family 215 years to grow from 1 to 70, 215 years. But in another 430 years, they grew to 2 million or more. So we're going to start seeing that in verse 8. Now, these were the names of the children of Israel, Jacob and his sons, who went to Egypt. So it's name of the sons. Reuben was Jacob's firstborn. The sons of Reuben were Hanok, Palu, Hezron, and Carmi. The sons of Simeon, the secondborn, were Jemuel, Jamin, Ohad, Jashin, Zohar. That name always reminds me of it. You ever go to an amusement place and there's a little booth there with this guy with a turban that says, he'll tell you your fortune. There's Zohar. And Shaul, the son of a Canaanite woman. The sons of Levi, he's the thirdborn, were Gershon, Kohath, and Merari. The sons of Judah were Onan, Shelah, Perez, and Zerah. It mentions here, but and Onan died in the land of Canaan, so they weren't coming. The sons of Perez, now it's funny because Perez wasn't one of the sons of Jacob or Israel. He was a grandson, but it mentions him here, and there's a reason, good reason for it. The sons of Perez were Hezron, because from Perez and Hezron is the line of Jesus. And Hamuel. And it says, look, I put a little note, look at Luke 3:33, 34. So let me see that. It says, the sons of Amminadab, the son of Ram, this is Jesus' lineage, the son of Hezron, the son of Perez, the son of Judah. So it's showing you there. And the son of Jacob, the son of Isaac, the son of Abraham, the son of Terah, and the son of Nahor. And it all builds up to, this one goes all the way back to Adam. But anyway, that's why it mentions Perez and Hezron there. The sons of Issachar were that's one of the other Jacob's sons, Issachar, was Tola, Puvah, Job, and Shimron. The sons of Zebulun were Sered, Elon, hey, his name's biblical, and Jahiel. I put on there chapter 34 of Genesis. Put little notes in my Bible to look up. Oh, that's the Dinah incident, because we're going to hear about Dinah here in a second. And there were sons of Leah, whom she bore to Jacob, those the ones we just read in Padan Aram, with his daughter Dinah. And Dinah, we read about the incident with her in chapter 34, that she was raped by the son of the king in Shechem, the prince. I mean, I don't think it was a violent rape or anything. I think he just loved her so much, and he just kind of seduced her, which was not good. But he didn't hurt her violently or anything. But rape is rape, and the brothers found out about it and tricked them into getting circumcised. And 3 days later, when they were in the most pain, they went and killed Simeon and Levi. Went and killed them all, which was a horrible act of anger out of control. You know, we'll read about that later when Jacob gives his blessings to the sons. He brings that up. Says, this is why you're not getting a good blessing, because of the horror you did and your lack of control with your violence. All the persons, his sons and his daughters, were 33. And that was from that group. The sons of Gad, his name means troop, were Ziphion, Haggai, Shuni, Esbon, Eri, Arodai, and Areli. The sons of Asher, which means happy, were Jimnah, Ishua, Iswi, Beriah, and Sarah, their sister. That's funny. It mentions another girl. That's unusual. And the sons of Beriah were Heber, Malchiel, and these were the sons of Zilpah, who Laban gave to Leah, his daughter. And these she bore to Jacob, 16 persons. Then the sons of Rachel, Jacob's wife, we might say Jacob's favorite wife, she was the one he wanted to marry in the first place, were Joseph and Benjamin. And to Joseph in the land of Egypt were born Manasseh and Ephraim, whom Asenath, the daughter of Potipharah, priest of On, bore to him. The sons of Benjamin, you know, I always thought Benjamin was some young kid that a little boy that Joseph wanted brought to Egypt when he told him, you're spies and everything. But apparently he had a bunch of kids, so he must have been in his early 20s or something. And his children sons were Bela, Betcher, Ashbel, Gera, Naaman, Ehi, Rosh. I like these two names, Muppim and Huppim. And and Ard. It's like, that's kind of funny, the two syllables and then the single syllable. Muppim, Huppim, Ard, get over here. Help your mother. These were the sons of Rachel, who were born to Jacob, 14 persons in all. And then the son of Dan, which means judge, was Hushim. The sons of Naphtali were Jaziel, Guni, Jezer, and Shillem. These were the sons of Bilhah, whom Laban gave to Rachel, his daughter, and she bore these to Jacob, 7 persons in all. All the persons who went with Jacob to Egypt, who came from his body, besides Jacob's sons' wives, were 66 persons in all. And the sons of Joseph, who were born to him in Egypt, were 2 persons. All the persons of the house of Jacob who went to Egypt were 70. And I think I have a thing here too. When I read that. Oh, this was talking about how, okay, it says 70, but in Acts 7:14, Stephen said that there were 75 who went into Egypt. This is because Stephen quoted from the Septuagint version of the Old Testament, which says 75. The number in the Septuagint was not wrong. It just arrived at a different way, specifically adding 5 more sons or grandsons of Joseph born in Egypt. So it added the grandsons. Okay, so then he sent, in verse 28, then he sent Judah before him to Joseph to point out before him the way to Goshen. So it should have been Reuben, the firstborn. But Reuben did something terrible when he slept with Bilhah, the one of the wives, the handmaid of one of his real wives, but she was used to bear more children from Jacob, and he slept with her like, I'm going to be the one in charge around here, and so he lost his right to firstborn, and then the other 2, Simeon and Levi, of course, did the horrible massacre thing, so that left Judah as the 4th one, and we didn't go over chapter 37, I think it was, because it was kind of an interlude. You know, we said it doesn't really have to do with Joseph. It was about Judah, but it showed the difference in their character. And Judah didn't have he left the family, went and married a Canaanite woman, and all this horrible stuff happened. And so, and he's also the one who suggested that they sell Joseph to make some money to the Ishmaelite traders going by. But when he became older, like 22 years later or something, Joseph was testing them in Egypt to see if they'd changed. Judah was the one who said, don't keep Benjamin. Let Benjamin go home to his father. My father will die if Benjamin doesn't go home. Keep me. Do whatever you want to me. Put me in prison. Make me a slave. Whatever you want, do it to me, Judah said. So you can see over time we can change. And Judah did, and that gave Joseph a lot of hope when he saw that change, and it made him weep. And so now Jacob sends Judah ahead to show the way to Goshen. And they came to the land of Goshen. Verse 29, so Joseph made ready his chariot, because he wasn't there yet, and went to Goshen to meet his father Israel, and he presented himself to him. This is the first time Joseph has seen him in like 22 years, and the first time Jacob has seen his son's favorite son, Joseph, in 22 years. Fell on his neck and wept on his neck a good while. Verse 30, and Israel said to Joseph, now let me die, since I have seen your face, because you are still alive. He says, now I can go in peace. I can die right now. I'm so happy, And then Joseph said to his brothers and to his father's household, he said, I will go up and tell Pharaoh and say to him, my brothers and those of my father's house who were in the land of Canaan have come to me, and the men are shepherds, for their occupation has been to feed livestock, and they have brought their flocks, their herds, and all that they have. So it shall be when Pharaoh, now he's giving them a tip, he says, so it shall be when Pharaoh calls you and says, what is your occupation? That you shall say, Your servant's occupation has been with livestock from our youth, even till now, both we and also our fathers. He says, tell him that, so that you may dwell in the land of Goshen. He said, for every shepherd is an abomination to the Egyptians. So he's giving them a briefing saying, this is what you're to tell Pharaoh. In chapter 47, then Joseph went and told Pharaoh, wait a minute, do I want to read this? Let me see. Yeah, let me read this. It said, indeed, the Pharaohs, after Joseph's death, forgot about Joseph and made the people of Israel slaves. In Exodus 1, 8 through 10. This shows what would happen in theory if we had no representative or advocate before God. But Jesus, not Mary, not saints, is our eternal representative and advocate, being the same yesterday, today, and forever. So Joseph, has many Jesus-like symbols, and that's one of them. He was like the advocate for his brothers and his father between Pharaoh, who kind of represented God back then. God had a place for his people. He didn't bring them to Egypt and give them no home. It wasn't enough for Joseph to provide for their needs in Canaan. In Canaan, he had to bring them to the place he prepared for them. We see Jesus in both aspects. He takes care of us in the present, but has gone to heaven to prepare a place for us and will receive us to himself. Okay. Then Joseph went. This is chapter 47. Joseph went and told Pharaoh and said, hey, my father and my brothers, their flocks and their herds and all that they possess have come from the land of Canaan. And indeed, they are in the land of Goshen right now. And he took 5 men from among his brothers. Doesn't say who. And presented them to Pharaoh. Maybe they're the ones that look the most cleaned up. Then Pharaoh said to his brothers, what's your occupation? And they said to Pharaoh, your servants are shepherds. They're repeating what Joseph told them. Your servants are shepherds, both we and also our fathers. And they said to Pharaoh, we have come to dwell in the land because your servants have no pasture for their flocks, for the famine is severe in the land of Canaan. Now, therefore, please let your servants dwell in the land of Goshen, which was right by the Nile River, and it was well watered. Then Pharaoh spoke to Joseph, saying, your father and your brothers have come to you. The land of Egypt is before you. Have your father and brothers dwell in the best of the land. He sure loved Joseph too, for all that, Joseph interpreted his dreams. Joseph saved their country from the famine. He loved Joseph. He said, let them dwell in the land of Goshen. And if you know any competent men among them, then make them chief herdsmen over my livestock. Then Joseph brought in his father, Jacob, and set him before Pharaoh. I could just picture him. This real old guy, coming in. And Jacob, this is cool, Jacob blessed Pharaoh. Pharaoh said to Jacob, how old are you? And Jacob said to Pharaoh, the days of my years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Few and evil have been the days of the years of my life, and they have not attained to the days of the years of the life of my fathers in the days of their pilgrimage. Well, we know he's going to live another 17 years. So Jacob blessed Pharaoh and went out from before Pharaoh. And Joseph situated his father and his brothers and gave them a possession in the land of Egypt, in the best of the land, in the land of Ramses, as Pharaoh had commanded. Does this sound like Jesus and us? It sounds like how Jesus treats us. Then Joseph provided, here's Jesus again, Joseph provided his father and his brothers and all the father's household with bread according to the number of their families. They're being more blessed than the Egyptians. The Egyptians, remember, had to pay for all that. They had to pay with money And then when that ran out, they had to pay with their livestock. And when that ran out, they paid with their land. And then they paid with themselves. They said, we'll be servants to Pharaoh. And they had to move from their land into the cities where they stored all the food. Now there was no bread in all the land. Verse 13. Is that correct? Yeah. For the famine was very severe, so that the land of Egypt and the land of Canaan languished because of the famine. And Joseph gathered up all the money that was found in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan for the grain which they bought. And Joseph brought the money into Pharaoh's house. So when the money failed in the land of Egypt and in the land of Canaan, all the Egyptians came to Joseph and said, "Give us bread, for why should we die in your presence? For the money has failed." So now they're kind of begging. And Joseph said, "We'll give your livestock, and I will give you bread for your livestock if the money's gone." So they brought their livestock to Joseph, and Joseph gave them bread in exchange for the horses, the flocks, the cattle, and the herds, for the donkeys. Thus he fed them with bread in exchange for all their livestock that year. When that year had ended, remember there's 7 years, and when Joseph's brothers came back, there were still 5 more years to go. When that year had ended, they came to him the next year and said to him, "We will not hide from you, my lord, that our money's gone. My lord also has our herds of livestock. There's nothing left in the sight of my lord but our bodies and our lands. Why should we die before your eyes, both we and our land? Buy us and our land for bread, and we and our land will be servants to Pharaoh." It sounds like here they're the ones suggesting this. It's not like Joseph told them, "Well, give me your," it's like they came up with the idea, and he said, "Okay." They said, "Give us seed that we may live and not die, that the land may not be desolate." So they want to replant. Maybe it was like the last year of famine, I don't know. Then Joseph bought all the land of Egypt for Pharaoh. For every man of the Egyptians sold his field, because the famine was severe upon them. So the land became Pharaoh's. And as for the people, he moved them into the cities from one end of the borders of Egypt to the other end. Only the land of the priests he did not buy, for the priests had rations allotted to them by Pharaoh, and they ate their rations which Pharaoh gave them. Therefore they did not sell their lands. Then Joseph said to the people, "Indeed, I have bought you and your land this day for Pharaoh. Look, here is seed for you, and you shall sow the land. And it shall come to pass in the harvest that you shall give 1/5 to Pharaoh." So he's letting them keep 80% of it. 4/5 shall be your own as the seed for the field, and for your food, for those of your households, and as food for your little ones. So they said, "You have saved our lives. Let us find favor in the sight of my lord, and we will be Pharaoh's servants." And Joseph made it a law over the land of Egypt to this day that this was written, that Pharaoh should have 1/5, 20%, except for the land of the priests only, which did not become Pharaoh's. So it's a 20% tax. So then Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt, in the country of Goshen, and they had possessions there and grew and multiplied exceedingly. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the length of Jacob's life was 147 years. When the time drew near that Israel must die, he called his son Joseph and said to him, "Now if I have found favor in your sight, please put your hand under my thigh and deal kindly and truly with me." That's how they made pledges. Remember, Abraham did that when he wanted his servant to find a wife for his son Isaac. He said, "Put your hand under my thigh and swear to me you won't give him a Canaanite wife, And he says, "Go to my wife's father's house and look." I think he said that. I think that's what there. Anyway, he went, and that's when he found Rebecca for him. Anyway, that's how they made these pledges. He says, "Please do not bury me in Egypt, but let me lie with my fathers, You shall carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burial place. And Joseph, this was to Joseph, right? Joseph said, I will do as you have said. Then he said, swear to me. And he swore to him. So Israel bowed himself on the head of the bed. Chapter 48. Now it came to pass after these things that Joseph was told, indeed your father is sick. And he took with him his 2 sons. So we don't know how much time passed between here, but now it's his father's pretty sick, so he's bringing his sons to him, Manasseh and Ephraim. And Jacob was told, look, your son Joseph is coming to you, and Israel strengthened himself and sat up in the bed. Then Jacob said to Joseph, God Almighty appeared to me at Luz. That's the old name of the city of Bethel, in the land of Canaan, and blessed me. And I have on there, check out Genesis 28:13. So let's do that. Genesis 28:13. It says, and behold, the Lord stood above it and said, I am the Lord God of Abraham your father, and the God of Isaac. The land on which you lie I will give to you and your descendants. And this was when Jacob had a dream in Bethel, and he's telling Joseph about it now. And it's the same message that God gave Abraham and Isaac. He gave to Jacob the same promise. He said, behold, I will make you fruitful and multiply you, and I will make you a multitude of people, and give this land to your descendants after you as an everlasting possession. Not until someone wants to claim that they're Palestinians and they own the land, or some government leader says we're going to split the land up for peace. It says, no, this is a promise from God, everlasting possession, that land. And now your 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, Jacob's telling Joseph, who were born to you in the land of Egypt before I came to you in Egypt, are mine. He's telling Joseph, well, you know what Reuben did, and you know what Simeon and Levi did, and I'm taking your 2 boys and replacing my sons with them. They're going to have that firstborn privilege is going to be split up. He says, they're mine. As Reuben and Simeon, they shall be mine. Your offspring, whom you beget after them, shall be yours. They will be called by the name of their brothers in their inheritance. So he's saying that, the 12 tribes of Israel will include Manasseh and Ephraim, or Ephraim and Manasseh is how, Manasseh was the firstborn, Ephraim was younger, but when he blesses him, he's going to switch it. And that happens every so often, and just to change the firstborn privileges. He said, but as for me, when I came from Padan, Rachel died beside me in the land of Canaan on the way. She was giving birth to Benjamin, and she died. When there was but a little distance to go to Ephrath, and I buried her there on the way to Ephrath, that is, Bethlehem. It gives a little side note in the Bible telling us. Then Israel saw Joseph's sons and said, his eyes are pretty dim right now, so he's seeing them. He goes, who are these? And Joseph said to his father, they are my sons, whom God has given me in this place. And he said, Jacob said, please bring them to me, and I will bless them. Now the eyes of Israel were dim with age, so that he could not see. Then Joseph brought them near him, and he kissed them and embraced them. And Israel said to Joseph, I had not thought to see your face, but in fact, God has also shown me your offspring. So Joseph brought them from beside his knees, and he bowed down with his face to the earth. And Joseph took them both, Ephraim with his right hand toward Israel's left hand, and Manasseh with his left hand toward Israel's right hand. So that's how it should be. He knows that in the blessing, Jacob's right hand, or Israel's right hand, should be on the older and his left hand on the younger. And I just forgot where I left off here. 14? Yeah. Then Israel stretched out his right hand and laid it on Ephraim's head, who was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, guiding his hands knowingly, for Manasseh was the firstborn. And he blessed Joseph and said, God, before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the God who has fed me all my life long to this day, the angel, that's short for the angel of the Lord, which is probably the Christophany of Jesus, who had probably the one that he wrestled with. The angel who has redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads. Let my name be named upon them, and the name of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. Now when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand on the head of Ephraim, it displeased him. So he took hold of his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head to Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, not so, my father. For this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his head. But his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great, but truly his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations. So he blessed them that day, saying, by you, Israel, will bless, saying, may God make you as Ephraim and as Manasseh. And thus he set Ephraim before Manasseh. Then Israel said to Joseph, behold, I am dying, but God will be with you and bring you back to the land of your fathers. I don't think there's been any prophecies in the Bible up until this point. I mean, except from God. This is the first time a human prophesies, and it comes true. Moreover, I have given to you one portion above your brothers, which that's how what you're supposed to do with the firstborn. You're supposed to get 2 portions. When I took from the hand of the Amorite with my sword and my bow. So there's some land he's promising here that he took. We never read about it, but he must have conquered somebody and took their land at one time. He's going to give that to Joseph and Manasseh and Ephraim. And I have something here I wanted to share with you from David Guzik in chapter 48 that we just did. I am with you. God gives the young believer every possible assurance of his presence and grace. That was from Genesis 28:15. And then he said, I will be with you in Genesis 31:3. God expects the growing believer to trust he will be with him even when he only has the promise of his presence. And in Genesis 31:5, God has been with me. God gives a glorious testimony to the mature believer, able to say how God has been with him, even when he hasn't felt his presence in the way he wished. And in Genesis 48:21 that we read, God will be with you. That's what Jacob told Joseph. God gives the mature believer the opportunity to encourage others with the promise of God's presence. So we see Jacob became a mature believer, Israel, over time, and that's what God's been working on him to be. Joseph as a picture of Jesus. Joseph is one of the most remarkable portraits of Jesus, the Messiah, in all the Bible. In many ways, his life illustrated the future life and work of Jesus. Here are a few ways in which Joseph and Jesus are alike. This is Charles Spurgeon now. There is scarcely any personal type in the Old Testament which is more clearly and fully a portrait of our Lord Jesus Christ than is the type of Joseph. Joseph was, or both of them were shepherds, loved by his father. I think I read this to you last time, didn't I? I think I had this printed out. Let's see. No, it was a different one. Loved by his Father, sent unto his brethren, just like Jesus was, hated by his brothers, Jesus was, prophesied his coming glory, rejected by his brothers, endured unjust punishment from his brothers, sentenced to the pit, condemned to the pit, though a leader knew he should go free. So it's talking about Potiphar and Pontius Pilate. Sold for pieces of silver. Joseph was sold for 20. Jesus was sold for 30. Handed over to the Gentiles. Regarded as dead, but raised out of the pit. Went to Egypt when Jesus was small to hide from Herod. Made a servant. Jesus was our servant. Washed the feet of the disciples, or the apostles. Tempted severely, but did not sin. That's a good one. That's so true. Joseph was tempted very much and didn't sin. And Jesus, of course, by Satan. Falsely accused. Boy, that's so true. Both of them. Made no defense. Joseph never complained about it or tried to stick up for himself. I mean, he mentioned to the cupbearer, I'm innocent, please, when you get to your place, tell Pharaoh about me. I interpreted your dreams through God, and it was forgot about for 2 years. Made no defense. Jesus spoke not a word to his accusers. Pontius Pilate was baffled by that. It's like, don't you know I have the power to free you or to kill you? Cast into prison and numbered with sinners and criminals. That was humiliating for Jesus to be treated that way, spit on and slapped and hung on a cross of a criminal. Endured unjust punishment from Gentiles, associated with 2 other criminals. One was pardoned and one was not. I never remembered that, but that's true. The baker and the wine bearer, and then the 2 thieves on the cross. Showed compassion, brought a message of deliverance in prison. Jesus went down to set the captives free in Abraham's bosom. Brought a message of deliverance in the prison. Wanted to be remembered, shown to have divine wisdom, recognized as having the Spirit of God. Yeah, Potiphar even recognized that of him. Betrayed by friends, glorified after his humility, honored among Gentiles while still despised or forgotten by his brethren. Given a Gentile bride. We're the Gentile bride. Was 30 years old when he began his life's work. Interesting. Blessed the world with bread. I am the bread of life, Jesus said. Became the only source of bread for the world. Egypt was considered the world back then in the Bible. The world was instructed to go to him to do whatever he said to do, and was given the name God speaks and he lives. His brethren were driven out of their own land. In his second appearing, he did not first go to his brothers. They came to him. He knew his brethren even while unknown and unrecognized by them. He blessed his brethren without their knowledge. He wanted all of his brethren to come to him. There was a significant time gap between his initial relationship with his brothers and his second relationship with his brothers. Interesting. He gave his brothers a way of deliverance through substitution. His second coming to his brothers had 2 appearances. He made himself known to his brethren at his second appearing to them. And these are all from David Guzik's commentaries, by the way. There's 49. I have just 7 more here. He was revealed as a man of compassion. His brothers repented of rejecting him with great amazement and tears. He allowed no fellowship, as in eating together, until his brothers repented and revealed himself. His brethren went forth to proclaim his glory. He made provision for his brethren. He prepared a place for his brethren, and he received them into it. He brought Jew and Gentile together in the land. Isn't that good? So now chapter 49. And Jacob called his sons and said, "Gather together that I may tell you what shall befall you in the last days." So this, the fathers, before he passes away, usually gives them their blessing. This is a blessing and also predictions of what prophecies of what their tribes are going to be like in the future. "Gather together and hear, you sons of Jacob, and listen to Israel your father. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might, and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity," which I think is pride, "and the excellency of power. Unstable as water, you shall not excel, because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it. He went up to my couch." So Reuben's probably hanging his head hearing all this. Next, Simeon and Levi are brothers. "Instruments of cruelty are in their dwelling place. Let not my soul enter their council. Let not my honor be united to their assembly. For in their anger they slew a man." That was chapter 34. You guys remember that? We didn't go over it ourselves, though. But that was in Dinah, the daughter of Leah. She had been born to Jacob, and I told you about that. When Shechem, the son of Hamor, who was the king, the Hivite, Shechem was prince of the country. He saw her, he took her and lay with her and violated her. His soul was strongly attracted to Dinah, the daughter of Jacob, and he loved the young woman and spoke kindly to the young woman. So Shechem spoke to his father Hamor, saying, "Get me this young woman as a wife." And Jacob heard that he had defiled Dinah, his daughter. Now his sons were with his livestock in the field, so Jacob held his peace until they came. Then Hamor, the father of Shechem, went out to Jacob to speak with him. And the sons of Jacob came in from the field when they heard it. And the men were grieved and very angry because he had done a disgraceful thing in Israel by lying with Jacob's daughter, a thing which ought not to be done. But Hamor spoke with them, saying, "The soul of my son Shechem longs for your daughter. Please give her to him as a wife." And make marriages with us. Give your daughters to us and take our daughters to yourselves. So you shall dwell with us, and the land shall be before you. Dwell and trade in it and acquire possessions for yourselves in it. He's trying to smooth everything over. Then Shechem said to her father and her brothers, "Let me find favor in your eyes, and whatever you say to me I will give. Ask me ever so much dowry and gift, and I will give according to what you say to me. But give me the young woman as a wife." So he's trying to make it right. But the sons, and he's on it. I mean, he's honestly, he would love her as his wife. But the sons of Jacob answered Shechem and Hamor his father and spoke deceitfully, because he had defiled Dinah, their sister. And they said to him, "We cannot do this thing to give our sister to one who is uncircumcised." So now they're defiling circumcision to try and trick them. He says, "For that would be a reproach to us. But on this condition we will consent to you," which they have no intention of doing, "if you will become as we are. If every male of you is circumcised, then we will give our daughters to you, and we will take your daughters to us, and we will dwell with you, and we will become one people. But if you will not heed us and be circumcised, then we will take our daughter and be gone." And their words pleased Hamor and Shechem, Hamor's son. So the young man did not delay to do the thing, because he delighted in Jacob's daughter. He was more honorable than all the household of his father. And Hamor and Shechem, his son, came to the gate of the city and spoke with the men of the city, saying, "Hey, these men are at peace with us, therefore let them dwell in the land and trade for it. For indeed the land is large enough for them. Let us take their daughters as our wives, and let us give them our daughters." So they're trying to ask these guys to go along with it. "Only this condition will the men consent to dwell with us. To be one people, every male has to be circumcised." And will not their livestock, their property, and their animal, of every animal of theirs, be ours? Only let us consent to them, and they will dwell with us. So he's trying to convince them. And they all went out of the gate of a city, heeded Hamor and Shechem his son, and every male was circumcised. All who went out of the gate of the city. And this is, I won't read anymore, it's taking up our time. But 3 days later, that's when Simeon and Levi grabbed the swords and said, let's get them now. And they went and killed them all. Killed them all. Then not just the prince, the one who raped Dinah, just killed every man, woman, child. And it said they even hamstrung the animals and stuff. It was very cruel. So here the Father's bringing that up, that they are instruments of cruelty and are in their dwelling place. Let not my soul enter their counsel, or their, no honor for them. In their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they hamstrung an ox. He says a man. I don't know why. They did everybody. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. And we'll find out these prophecies came true, that the tribe of Simeon used to be pretty large, and it became one of the smallest tribes as far as people that were able to help out in the military. And they were scattered amongst other tribes, and Levi too, they never really got their own land, and they became priests. But I have on there, look at Ephesians 4:26. And that says, be angry and do not sin. Do not let the sun go down on your wrath. And in Ephesians 4:31, a little further, let all bitterness, wrath, anger, clamor, and evil speaking be put away from you with all malice. That's how we're to be. That's how we're to be. Simeon was one of the weakest tribes in number, and they shared on they shared the lands with Judah. They had to share with Judah. Then the next person, Judah, the fourth son. You are he whom your brothers shall praise. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's children shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He bows down, he lies down as a lion. And as a lion, who shall rouse him? Jesus was the lion from the tribe of Judah. It says in Revelation 5:5. The scepter shall not depart from Judah. We find out that from David until the Herods, a prince of Judah was head over Israel, even when they were in captivity. Nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh comes. I believe that's a reference to the Messiah. And to him shall be the obedience of the people, binding his donkey to the vine and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. That's talking about how rich they will be. The land of Judah had great abundance, and it was a great wine-producing country. He washed his garments in wine. Now this is a reference to the Messiah. And his clothes in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk. Now another son, Zebulun, shall dwell in the haven by the sea, between the sea of, between the Sea of Galilee and the Mediterranean Sea is where they wound up. He shall become a haven for ships, and his border shall adjoin Sidon. Now, Issachar was born actually before Zebulun, so it's switched here. Jacob switched them and talked about Zebulun first, gave him his blessing first before Issachar. Issachar is a strong donkey lying down between two burdens. He saw that rest was good, and that the land was pleasant. He bowed his shoulder to bear a burden and became a band of slaves. What? It starts out good. It says that, I was looking it up, and Issachar became a large tribe, third largest of the 12 tribes in size, and that's in Numbers 26. But someone wrote that they might have become lazy, and they, since they were so huge, warring tribes could come in and maybe capture them and make slaves out of some of them. Now Dan, in verse 16, shall judge his people. Dan means judge. As one of the tribes of Israel, Dan shall be a serpent by the way, a viper by the path that bites the horse's heels, so that its rider shall fall backward. I have waited for your salvation, O Lord. That's a funny thing to say after all that. I have waited for your salvation, O Lord, says Judah. Dan, from that tribe, Samson came in Judges 13:2. And the tribe also became a troublesome tribe. They introduced idolatry to Israel. In Judges 18:30, in 1 Kings 12, and Amos 8, they were setting up golden calves and idol worship in Dan. And so it's pretty sad, but I think that's what it means by be a serpent on the way, a viper on the path. And then Gad means troop, and so he uses the name, a play on words here. Gad, a troop, shall tramp upon him, but he shall triumph at last. And bread from Asher, Asher means happy. Bread from Asher shall be rich. This tribe was good bakers, like Greg. And they're happy too. He shall yield royal dainties. So their land must have been pretty good. Naphtali is a deer let loose. He uses beautiful words. And we're going to find out that in the land of Naphtali is where Jesus would do the Sermon on the Mount. His words were beautiful coming out of there. I had from David Guzik, Dan did judge his people. They supplied one of the most prominent of the judges, Samson. Dan was a troublesome tribe. They introduced idolatry into Israel. Jeroboam set up one of his idolatrous golden calves in Dan, and later Dan became the center of idol worship in Israel. Something to serpent, by the way, refers to the idea that the Antichrist would come from the tribe of Dan. It gave some basis for that, but I didn't see it. And then Dan is left out of the listing of tribes regarding the 144,000. That's interesting. In Revelation 7:5 through 8, Dan is left out. But Dan is the first tribe listed in Ezekiel's millennial roll call of the tribes in Ezekiel 48. This is a remarkable sign of God's redemption. So the 144,000 are coming from the 12 tribes of Israel, but I think it mentions Joseph as one of the tribes from them, so they left Dan out. Naphtali's land was in a key portion near the Sea of Galilee, the region where Jesus did much of his teaching and ministry. It says, now when Jesus heard that John had been put in prison, he departed to Galilee, and leaving Nazareth, he came and dwelt in Capernaum, which is by the sea, in the regions of Zebulun and Naphtali, that it might be fulfilled which was spoken by Isaiah the prophet, saying, the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, by the way of the sea beyond the Jordan, Galilee of the Gentiles. The people who sat in darkness have seen a great light, and upon those who sat in the region in the shadow of death, light has dawned. He uses beautiful words, Jacob said about Naphtali, because so much of the ministry of Jesus took place in the region of Naphtali. This was fittingly said of that tribe. That was David Guzik, by the way. So now we go to Joseph. It says Joseph is a fruitful bough by a well. His branches run over the wall. The arches have bitterly grieved him. The archers shot at him and hated him. That's talking about his brothers. But his bow remained in strength. That's talking about his character. His character remained strong. And the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. Now, Israel, Jacob, is mentioning 5 different names for God here. That starts out with the mighty God of Jacob. And he says, from there is the shepherd. This is a new one for God. The stone of Israel, that's the 3rd name. By the God of your father, who will help you, and by the Almighty, who will bless you with blessings of heaven above. Listen to all the blessings. With blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lies beneath, blessings of the breasts of the womb, and blessings of your father have excelled the blessings of my ancestors. Up to the utmost bound of the everlasting hills, they shall be on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of the head of him who was separate from his brothers. Quite a blessing there. It surpasses Judas, but Judas was a great blessing. David Guzik said that Jacob, for much of his life, he was a scoundrel, and now at the end of his days, he just saw how good God was to him. He was forgiven much and loved much. When he says the mighty God of Jacob in his words about Joseph, Jacob listed 5 great titles for God. The titles show that Jacob did come to an understanding of who God is. The mighty God of Jacob, the shepherd, the stone of Israel, the God of your father, and the Almighty. This is much better than when Jacob referred to God as the God of Abraham or the fear of his father Isaac. Now he knew who God was for himself. So now Benjamin gets a blessing. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. Maybe that's more of a prophecy than a blessing. It was a tribe with a reputation for fierceness. In Judges 20:13 and 14, it was the tribe that that a Levite took a prostitute for a wife, and she ran away from him, and he went to find her. He was very kind to her, and wound up in the area of the Benjamites, and they were acting like Sodom and Gomorrah in that area, the Benjamites. It's like, what happened? It was horrible. And it was just a super sad story. They did horrible things there, and they even he gave her to them, and they abused her till she died. And when he told all the other tribes about it, they were furious and came to fight Dan. And instead of the tribe of Dan saying, oh, that's just those weirdos, we're sorry, they were standing up to fight against all the tribes of Israel to defend those guys. It's like, that was bizarre. That was Ehud. And then Saul came from that tribe, King Saul, who harassed his enemies. Paul, who was Saul before that, came from that tribe, and he made havoc with everybody. So all these are the 12 tribes of Israel. And this is what their father spoke to them, and he blessed them. He blessed each one according to his own blessing. Then he charged them and said to them, I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought. That's the only land that was ever bought by Abraham. He was always in his tent, wandering, but he wanted to place to bury his wife, Sarah. Abraham bought with the field of Ephraim the Hittite as a possession for the burial place. They buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac his son and Rebekah his wife. And there I buried Leah. The field and the cave there that is there were purchased from the son of Heth. And when Jacob had finished commanding his sons, he drew his feet up into the bed and breathed his last and was gathered to his people. Wow. Then chapter 50. Then Joseph fell on his father's face. This is the last chapter from Genesis, by the way. 50 chapters. Joseph fell on his father's face and wept over him and kissed him. And Joseph commanded his servants and the physicians to embalm his father, not the priests. The priests in Egypt usually did the embalming. He didn't want any of that. He knew who God, the one and only God, was. So he had the physicians embalm Israel, and it's a 40-day thing. For 40 days required for him, for such are the days required for those who are embalmed. And the Egyptians mourned for him 70 days. I read that when a pharaoh would die, or someone high up in authority, super high in authority, they mourned for 72 days. So Jacob was way up there. 70 days of mourning. Now when the days of his mourning were past, Joseph spoke to the household of Pharaoh. Not to Pharaoh himself for some reason, but to the household. Pharaoh might have been out of the area or something. If now I have found favor in your eyes, please speak in the hearing of Pharaoh, saying, my father made me swear, saying, behold, I am dying in my grave, which I dug for myself in the land of Canaan. There you shall bury me. So he's telling Pharaoh, he made me swear to that. Now therefore, please let me go up and bury my father, and I will come back. And Pharaoh said, go up and bury your father, as he made you swear. So Joseph went up to bury his father, and with him went up all the servants of Pharaoh, the elders of his house, and all the elders of the land of Egypt. Wow. As well as all the house of Joseph, his brothers, and his father's house. Only their little ones, their flocks and their herds, they left in the land of Goshen. And there went up with him both chariots and horsemen, and it was a very great gathering. Then they came to the threshing floor of Atad, which is beyond the Jordan, and they mourned there with a great and very solemn lamentation. He observed 7 days of mourning for his father there. And when the inhabitants of the land of the Canaanites saw the mourning at the threshing floor of Atad, they said, this is a deep mourning of the Egyptians. Therefore its name was called Abel Mizraim, which is beyond the Jordan. And that means mourning of Egypt, the mourning and the weeping and everything of Egypt. So his sons did for him just as he had commanded. Well, that's good, because usually the sons were giving him grief. And now they're honoring him by obeying him. For his sons carried him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field of Machpelah before Mamre, which Abraham bought with the field from Ephraim the Hittite as property for the burial place. And after he had buried his father, Joseph returned to Egypt, he and his brothers and all who went up with him to bury his father. What an honor that all the Pharaoh's household went to. When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, perhaps Joseph will hate us and may actually repay us for all the evil which we did to him. So they're going, maybe, do you think Joseph was kind to us just because of Dad? And now Dad's dead? He's going to go, turn on him. So they sent messengers to Joseph saying, before your father died, he commanded, saying, thus you shall say to Joseph, I beg you, please forgive the trespass of your brothers and their sin, for they did evil to you. Now please forgive the trespass of the servants of the God of your father. Do you think that was true? Do you think Jacob said that? I don't think so either. Well, and Joseph wept when they spoke to him. He's like, guys, don't you, my character, don't you know who I am? I showed you kindness before Dad even came, and stuff. Then his brothers also went and fell down before his face. That reminds me of that dream Joseph had when he was young. And they said, behold, we are your servants. And Joseph said to them, "Do not be afraid, for am I in the place of God? But as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, in order to bring it about, as it is to this day, to save many people alive. Now therefore, do not be afraid. I will provide for you and your little ones." And he comforted them and spoke kindly to them. So Joseph dwelt in Egypt, he and his father's household, and Joseph lived 110 years. Joseph saw Ephraim's children, that's his youngest son, to the third generation, his grandchildren's. And the children of Mashir, the son of Manasseh, were also brought up on Joseph's knees. And Joseph said to his brothers, "I am dying, but God will surely visit you and bring you out of this land, to the land of which he swore to Abraham." So Joseph's telling them, he's telling them a prophecy too. But let me go back here. David Guzik says about Joseph saying, "Am I in the place of God?" Joseph first understood that he was not in the place of God. It's like, why would I kill you, you know? It wasn't his job to bring retribution upon his brothers. If the Lord chose to punish them, he would have to find an instrument other than Joseph. From a human perspective, Joseph had the right and the ability to bring retribution upon his brothers, but he knew God was God and he was not. Such retribution was God's place, not Joseph's. And when he said, as for you, you meant evil against me, but God meant it for good, Joseph did not romanticize the wrong his brothers did. He plainly said, "You meant evil against me." Although this was true, it was not the greatest truth. The greatest truth was God meant it for good. Every Christian should be able to see the overarching and overruling hand of God in their life. To know that no God in their life, or to know that no matter what evil man brings against us, God can use it for good. Whatever evil man brings against us, God can use it for good. Joseph did not have the text of Romans 8:28, but he had the truth of it. And we know that all things work together for good to those who love God, to those who are the called according to his purpose. Sadly, many of us who have the text do not have the truth. Ultimately, our lives are not in the hands of men, but in the hands of God, who overrules all things for his glory. And when Joseph said to save many people alive, this was the immediate good in the situation. If this large family did not come to Egypt and live, it would have perished in the famine. Had the family barely survived, it would have assimilated into the Canaanite tribes surrounding it. There was already 3 of the brothers that were already married. I think 2 married Canaanites. Only by coming to Egypt could they have preserved and persevered and grow into a distinct nation. And as said before, if Joseph's brothers never sold him to the Midianites, then Joseph would never have gone to Egypt. If Joseph never went to Egypt, he would never have been sold to Potiphar. If Joseph was never sold to Potiphar, Potiphar's wife would never have falsely accused him of rape. If Potiphar's wife never falsely accused Joseph of rape, then Joseph would never have been put in prison. And if Joseph was never put in prison, he would have never met the baker and the butler of Pharaoh. If Joseph never met the baker and butler of Pharaoh, he would have never interpreted their dreams. If Joseph never interpreted their dreams, he would have never interpreted Pharaoh's dream. If Joseph never interpreted Pharaoh's dream, he never would have become prime minister, second in Egypt only to Pharaoh. If Joseph never became prime minister, he never would have wisely prepared for the terrible famine to come. If Joseph never wisely prepared for the terrible famine, then his family back in Canaan would have died in the famine. If Joseph's family back in Canaan died in the famine, then the Messiah could not have come from a dead family. If the Messiah did not come forth, then Jesus never came. If Jesus never came, then we are all dead in our sins and without hope in this world. So we are grateful for God's great and wise plan. And because Joseph trusted the overarching hand of God, even in all the evil that came upon him through his brothers, he showed the love and compassion to them that he did. Often the problems we have in loving others and in freeing ourselves from bitterness we may have towards them is really a problem of not knowing who God is and trusting him to be who he says he is. He said, I will provide for you and your little ones. Right? We read that? Did we? Yeah, I think he did. Joseph's love for his brothers was shown not only in feelings and words, but also in practical action. He actually did provide for his brothers and their families. George Mueller was a remarkable man of faith who ran orphanages in England. Well, let me get to that after this. We'll finish here. Then Joseph took an oath from the children of Israel, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here. So Joseph died, being 110 years old, and they embalmed him, and he was put in a coffin in Egypt. So we see in the future in Exodus, let me go there, 13, verse 19. It says, and Moses, this is 400 years later, Moses took the bones of Joseph with him, for he had placed the children of Israel under solemn oath, saying, God will surely visit you, and you shall carry up my bones from here with you. And then Hebrews 11:22. By faith, Joseph, when he was dying, made mention of the departure of the children of Israel and gave instructions concerning his bones. And then David Guzik says, George Mueller, who was a remarkable man of faith who ran orphanages in England, in a sermon preached when he was 75 years old, he said, 30,000 times in his 54 years as a Christian, he received the answer to prayer on the same day he prayed it. But not all his prayers were answered so quickly. He told of one prayer that he brought to God about 20,000 times over more than 11 years, and he still trusted God for the answer. He said, I hope in God, I pray on, and look for the answer. Therefore, beloved brethren and sisters, go on waiting upon God. Go on praying. And David Guzik says, Joseph died looking forward to God's unfolding plan of redemption, and that is where the book of Genesis, the book of beginnings, ends. It concludes looking forward to the continuation of God's eternal, loving, wise plan. Amen. Lord, thank you so much for your guidance, your wisdom, and all the details you give us in your word, Lord, and the hope that you give us. And I pray that everyone here, Lord, continues to pray what they're praying for and knows that you've heard us, Lord. And we don't know what your answer will be, but we know we want your will to be done. And whatever your answer is the best. So we thank you again, Lord, for this time that we can study your word and ask for your blessings on everyone here, Lord, and give them wisdom and understanding and hope and love and peace. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Amen. Thank you guys.